Notice any tension in your body, your emotional state, any sensory awareness that's here, what you're sitting on. And just take another breath or two. And feel this beautiful body that is yours. And just notice your readiness to receive some information. Be doing some talking and reflecting and checking in with your body during this masterclass. So it's always nice to arrive here first. If you're feeling any tension, it might be nice just to give yourself a little jiggle or a shake, a little wriggle, take a couple of breaths, sort of open your body, whatever feels appropriate. All right. So now we're a little more here, although we can do much more arriving. We'll get started. So for those who have not met me, and also those of you on the replay, my name is Bree. Very happy to have you all here. Talking about reclaiming the holy whore, the sacred slut. It's a very powerful energy, and it's been very alive in me. So I'm very excited to be able to share this with you and I guess receive, what's live for you in your bodies and your lives. And So with this masterclass, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a short introduction about me, because many of you haven't worked with me before, and a little bit about my journey that got me here. And then I'm going to start talking about the concepts that underpin the energies of the holy whore. And we'll be doing an embodiment practice at the end. So if you can stay till the end, that would be great. If you can't, you can obviously do it on the replay. So honor yourself and do what's appropriate for you. If you need to leave, that's okay. You can just tap out, and again, you can get the replay. But it's nice to have some of you here in live time. It's much more vibrant for me to be talking to you here as opposed to just talking to myself. So thank you for making the effort to be here in, this virtual circle. So I guess a little bit about me. I came to this work of embodying intimacy quite a long time ago, but I didn't really understand the power of it back then. And so I worked as a hypnotherapist, a clinical hypnotherapist for a long time. I worked with the mind, and I really believed that the mind was such a powerful vessel. And I never really wanted to get into body work or anything more hands-on, because I felt like my specialty was working with the mind. And, that was 10 years ago. And now I would say my specialty is working with the body, quite ironically. But what actually made me make that change was part of the story that I'm going to tell you about how I got to this archetype of the holy whore. Was my marriage ended. And so we'd done Tantra, we'd done courses, I'd read bucket loads of books, but I hadn't really achieved the change in my relationship that I had wanted. We were together quite a long time. I have a teenage son as the product of that marriage. But the thing that hypnotherapy and all the mind over matter stuff didn't give me as a woman was the tools to navigate my body in relationship, the tools to navigate my pleasure, and the permission to actually explore this concept of sexual liberation, healthy communication, speaking desires, knowing how to turn on my own pleasure, and to do all of that without shame. All the Tantra books in the world that I read didn't give me the practical techniques that I now teach. And so for a long time I struggled, and I had low libido. I thought I was broken. He thought I was broken. So there was so many things that I'm going to talk about. I maybe won't go into them all today, but the things that birthed this concept is understanding how closed down I was sexually. And so you are all going to be in different places in your journey, but I'm sharing this because I hope it resonates for you. And at least you understand that I'm a real person that's had real challenges, and I didn't get here off the back of a white horse. You know, I've got my stuff. And so one of the biggest challenges in that relationship for me was I had all these desires and dark fantasies, and I couldn't communicate them. My throat was so disconnected from the rest of my body. I was strong and I was confident in all the rest of the world, but it was really living from my head. And so if this resonates with you, ladies, please use the little emojis in the bottom bar of Zoom. If you're familiar with where that is, there's a little react button. You can give me a heart or a thumbs up or whatever's relevant for you. But just understanding that, you know, for me, the pain of not being able to resolve that for a long time, 17 years, really spurred me when that relationship ended to want to fix the pain that I was in. And so it drove me into my body. So it drove me into embodied practice. And this is where I started to understand what, for me, what Tantra really is. It's energetics and it's perspectives and it's dualities, but it's really about being in our body. And I have done yoga since I was 19. It's been in my life for 25 years, but I still wasn't really in my body in the way I would describe it now. And so even as I talk about this, like a lot of women think they're in their bodies, but they still feel numb at times, or they still disconnect during sex. And so there's nothing wrong with that, but just being aware that sometimes when we have these challenges, we don't even really know as a society what it is to be in our bodies. And I don't believe we can be empowered, fully present, sexually liberated women if we're not in our bodies first. And so I can tell you lots about my story, but hopefully that gives you a little taste of where I've come from. And, you know, I went down this path of Tantra and BDSM and kink and all these things, which are all body-based. And I started to really uncover the parts of me that were so afraid to go into what I would term as the primal dark energies that this, you know, this holy horse sort of vibrates at. And in doing that, I really discovered that I could open my throat and I could open my body to pleasure when I understood the tools of how to be safe in myself and how to become free in my body sexually, whether it was in relationship with someone or not. And so one of the big things about this concept of the holy whore is, you know, a couple of people have said to me, well, I don't want to be sleeping with lots of people. That's not what this is about. And we're going to talk about it a lot more. That's your choice. But for me, that's not what it means. It means empowerment, freedom to choose. I can go and do kink. I can go and do Tantra. I can meld and blend them all together. And it's my choice. And I'm not closed down out of fear. And so what we're going to be talking about a lot today is shame and the impact that shame has on our bodies, particularly as women, because when we're coming from a place of shame, we can't open. And that was the thing that for me, my throat was locked up all the time in trying to communicate my sexual desires because there was so much shame there. And so again, if you feel like you're already aware, you hold some of this, then just give me some feedback with the little emoji bar at the bottom, and maybe you've already worked through it. You know, again, everyone's in their own journey, and there's a spectrum of time and space here and how much work you've done in this, but I also believe there's always more. There's more layers and more levels. And the intention of this concept is also quite an advanced concept. It's not something everyone's going to feel comfortable with, and it is quite edgy. It's edgy for me to be sharing it with you, to be honest. And so it's very, very exciting, and yet while I've prepared some things to talk to you about, it's not polished. And so I want you to feel the potency of this without me having to go through a script. I really want to invite you to feel the power of what we're going to talk about in your own body. And so maybe let's start with that. Just take a moment and just feel whatever I shared about my story that was relevant for you. Maybe you've been there, maybe you've had friends who've been there, maybe you've always felt sexually liberated, but just feel whatever that evoked in your body. And give yourself permission to be where you are. because for me, a big part of making this shift was accepting where I was and getting the skills to be somewhere else. And a lot of that required doing what I would call shadow work. And I'm going to talk to you about that. And that was moving things through the body, because the body, I believe, is where we hold a lot of these patterns. As I said, I worked as a hypnotherapist for a long time, and I thought that I could resolve most things through the mind, but then I started to figure out that my own sexual relationship wasn't changing for all the hypnosis in the world. I had to learn how to be in my body and listen to my body. And so I believe that is the case for all women. We are body-based beings, and we need to be given the tools to navigate our bodies. And so let's start to talk about that a little bit more. I have some slides that I'm going to share with you. Let's see. Nope, not that one. There we go. Can you just let me know that you can see that? Can I get a thumbs up or something? Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. So, is there anything else I need to tell you about today? Yeah, I mean, shame is the big thing that we're going to start to dive into. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to talk to you about some words, and I'm going to invite you to really notice how these land in your body. Because when we're talking about sexual liberation and shame, it's really useful to know what we're already holding. What is our baseline of comfort around some of these terms? So let's start with that. So I want you to look at each word and just notice how it feels in your body. Slut. Do you notice any contraction in your body? Do you notice your breath changes? Maybe it opens you. Just notice what you notice, and I'd invite you to, as you go through these, just share in the chat with me what you're noticing in your sensory somatic body. So what that means is not necessarily what your mind says, although that's okay, but more, oh, my throat closed, or my heart skipped a beat, or I felt sick in my stomach. These are more sensory somatic things. So how do these words land in your body? Slut, prostitute, and whore. One of these might have more charge for you than the other. They might all mean the same thing. They might mean different things. For me, they mean different things. Didn't mean to do that yet. Hardness in your stomach, cringing in your face. Okay. And I wonder why that is. So is there an emotion that comes to mind when you think about these words, these energies? Numbness. So for me, if I feel into the energy of these words, there's just a subtle contraction in my throat. It's like a sense of control, like can't speak freely. Shame, fear, yeah. And so maybe most of you can recognize aspects of that in your body, the concepts of shame and fear. Of like, I can't be that, it's not safe to be that, I've been that, whatever your story is. But it's really beautiful to take a moment and feel it, even if it's not comfortable. And this is the thing about embodied work. For those of you who've not done anything in the world of embodiment, I probably should define what that is. For me, it's really using the feedback system of our body and learning to work with our body, because our body holds our safety, it holds our beliefs, but also our energetic readiness in the world. So if we're feeling restricted in our energetic body or our physical body or our emotional body, we can't show up as the fullest versions of ourselves. So if these things evoke shame and fear, then the body is going to respond. So the body is our lifetime feedback system. It's not safe, yeah. So just take a breath, and I just want you just to breathe in all these words that I've been speaking, that you've been sharing. It's not safe, fear, shame, numbness, hardness, anything else you notice in your own body, and just take a breath out your mouth. And can you be in acceptance of that discomfort without trying to fix it? Because so often we have sensations come up in our body, and the first response is, I've got to push it away. I've got to get rid of it. And one of the premises of embodied practice is, can I witness it and be with it, be a yes to it, be a yes to what is here without trying to push it away or make it wrong? And that doesn't mean it feels good all the time, but it's a state of acceptance of who we are and where we are in our own bodies. It's another one, rejection. Thank you. And so the wounds around these words run deep for most of us. So I'm going to make some general statements around things. If they don't land for you, that's completely okay. But I'm going to share my perspective around these concepts and take what is useful for you. Let's do a couple more words. Temptation, lust, desire. What happens in your body now? Oh, I can't have it. Only lucky people have this. I would say something for me from my past would be forbidden. It's forbidden energy, not allowed. But also a sense of excitement. It's forbidden, but it's exciting. So that edginess of like, I want it, but I can't have it. But oh, it's dangerous, but it's exciting. All these conflicting energies. Arousal. Anyone else? What else do you notice in your body? So is it opening or closing is another way to think about it. If you've never done this kind of a check-in before, is this opening me? Do I feel more alive, or is it contracting me and closing me and I feel more restricted? Okay, so this is definitely, these ones are definitely expansive and opening. Isn't that interesting? Which they might not be for everybody. You know, all of these words mean different things to different people. We've all had different programming around all of these words as well. And that's okay. But the idea of where we're going today is to look at some of these and explore how we can start to move beyond them. Cautious and excited. Yes, but not too excited. There needs to be that level of safety there. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So I would suggest that the collective shame, and I'm going to use this word to describe women, you know, someone who was born with a womb. The collective shame most of us have held and hold around these words and the things that they mean, or we've been told they mean, and the energies behind them is big. Meaning we've been told for such a long time we can't be a slut, a whore. We can't have desire and lust and temptation and be safe in the world. And again, your personal story could be different. So forgive me if I'm making assumptions that don't resonate for you. But for most women that I speak to, these things are quite common. It's like, I can't show up with and express all of this and still feel okay and still feel welcome in society. Or I can't sleep with too many men and then be in a relationship and he'll think I was a slut before if I tell him my sexual history. Or I can't sleep with anyone until I get married. I can't express my desire and my lust. I want it, but it's forbidden and it's not safe. And a lot of this, you know, some would say this goes back a really, really long way. And I'm going to resist going into the potential history of all of that, some of which you may know, some of which you may not. But the point is more that we have been programmed, I'm going to say, to believe that these things are not okay for us to have. The shame has been laid on thick, ladies, and I don't believe that that is of service to us. Maybe you don't either. I don't believe that us continuing to be closed down and holding shame and fear about the erotic nature of us as women is of service to us, of service to the world, and of service to the people that we want to relate to. Most men I know want their women to be sexual sluts in the bedroom, particularly we're talking in a relationship. It's like, you know, you go out there and you be the boss babe during the day, or you be the happy wife, or whatever your dynamic looks like. And in the bedroom, I want you to be slutty. I want you to desire me. I want you to be filthy. And yet there's this dichotomy that can happen in us as women where we don't know how to reconcile both. And this is really interesting because women more than men, it would seem, have taken on this shame around sex. And I think it's because of the things that we have been told that these words mean. So I want to dive into a little bit of myth to, I guess, invite some unpacking of this. And some of you might know these stories and some of you might not, and that's okay. But have you heard of Lilith? Lilith, you could say, is a representation of the dark feminine, who was termed very evil. She represents this energy of the whore, lust, temptation, the forbidden fruit. She's also been called demon, all sorts of things. And if you don't know who Lilith is, you might know, I'm sure you know, the story of the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve, and how Eve ate the apple. She followed temptation, and that was bad. So she ate the apple. The temptation took them somewhere that it wasn't meant to take them. And where Lilith comes into this is Lilith was actually Adam's first wife. So Adam and Lilith were created the same time. Equals, you could say. And they were together. The myth says they were together for a long time. They had many children. And one day she got sick of him asking her to bow down to him. She said, we were created the same, Adam. We're equal. I don't need to be subservient to you just because I'm a woman. This did not go down well. And this went on for a period of time. But long story short, she resisted his control and manipulation. And so she was kicked out, banished. So you just even feel that. That's where a lot of this began, I believe. I can't speak up for myself. I can't say no. I can't say I want this, or I will get kicked out. And even worse, her children were actually murdered after she was banished, which unleashed the wildness that people now refer to her as a demon. I would go wild if someone killed my children. Would you? So the wrath of her was unleashed because this is not fair. I've not done anything wrong. And so she went on this journey out in the world, out into the underworld. She fucked lots of things. She basically came into this real sexual power extreme in the unhealthy, some would say. Meanwhile, Adam remarries Eve. And Eve is everything that Lilith was not. She's sweet. She's well-behaved. She was cut from his rib. So she is subservient to him in that metaphor. She does what she's told. She's sweet and virginal. And until she ate the apple, she was oblivious of the bigger world and the tree of knowledge of things like pleasure. And so the contrast of these two women is quite fascinating to look at when we look at archetypes, because one is sweet and well-behaved and complicit, and one is not. And so from a young age, whether we even knew this or not, most of us get told, this is what the world wants, you to be the Eve. The world doesn't want you to be the Lilith because it's not safe, and you'll lose your friends, you'll lose your family, you might lose your job, all sorts of things. And as women, we are not designed to be out in the world on our own. We need community, we need connection. And so the idea of being cast out is life and death, literally, for us. And I'm talking at a very cellular level. It's not always a logical thing. But the memory of this kind of mythology, whatever truth there is in it, has played out in our world over hundreds of years, where women have been disempowered by men. And I love men. I'm not disrespecting men, but I mean historically. And this is something we collectively still hold. This is why I'm talking about it. And so Lilith became the symbol of evil. The serpent that offered the apple to Eve became symbology of evil and darkness, not the energy that the Tantrikas would say it is, which is the Kundalini, the serpentine life force of chi that runs through our body. That is where so much of our power resides. That is sacred, not to be feared, but to be accessed. And Eve became the symbol of perfection, purity, and pure and virginal. And it's so ironic because most of us have bought into this whether we wanted to or not. The thing is, Lilith's story has been so distorted. The way she is portrayed, I was even looking at goddess statues last night of her, and she's got the horns and the big bat wings like a devil. That's not how I see Lilith. I've worked with Lilith in embodied practice, and that's not how she feels to me. So it's fascinating how these things get really distorted to create this picture of good and bad, evil and purity. I believe her story was really about giving us permission to be liberated. She had shit consequences for that, but we live in a different world. And it is time, you're probably here because you feel this, but it's time for us to have power and not be subservient to men, be equal to men, but also still have the knowing that our bodies gives us as women. We're very attuned to our bodies, and the more embodied practice we do, the more we amplify that, the more we give ourselves permission to show up as the fullest versions of ourselves, which means our sexual nature is not controlled or decided by someone else, whether it's through taking contraceptives, which reduce our sensitivity to our intuitive nature and our hormonal nature as women, whether it's medication, whether it's all the things that women are struggling with these days, endometriosis and stuff. I hear about this all the time, and I believe it's suppression of this power that we naturally are. And it's heartbreaking because we've been giving this power away, and we keep getting encouraged to give it away or medicate it away, as opposed to coming into how do I express more of this in the world in a way that feels good for me and that is also safe. And this is why Lilith's story, for me, is so interesting and relevant for so many of us. And so there's this concept of the Madonna whore complex, which I've already painted a picture in those two women, Eve and Lilith. Madonna being the virginal Madonna, or Mary, mother of Jesus, as the Madonna, the purity of the feminine heart. But she's virginal, she doesn't have sex. And then the whore of Lilith, or whoever represents that for you. And so this concept of the Madonna whore complex is again very common in the psyche of most of us. And so I'm talking about archetypes here, but for most of us, Archetypes are just a representation of something that are deeply buried in our unconscious mind. At least that's what Sigmund Freud and many other people hypothesize from the world of psychology. And even back, in the 1900s was when he came up with this idea around the Madonna whore complex, the fact that men would often see women as sexual objects, Lilith, or wives to marry. And a lot of men struggled back then, at least, to see the woman who could be all of that and more. And yet we are more than that. But sometimes we get stuck in this dichotomy in ourselves. I know I did, in that marriage. It was like, I want to be the whore with my husband, but I was so stuck in the good wife thing that I locked myself away and didn't give myself permission because it didn't feel safe and all sorts of other things, whole lot of reasons. And so I invite you to notice where you sit in this dichotomy right now. Where have you been in the earlier stages of your life? Have you stayed more in the Eve, as I did, pure and virginal and sweet for such a long time, until suddenly I was like, oh no, I need some Lilith. Maybe you've done both. Maybe you've only done one. Maybe you feel like you're quite balanced, and that's beautiful. So where are you? I'd love you to share with me in the comments. Who is most alive and familiar for you? And as you feel into that, I guess I'll mention this is why, for me, embodied reclamation is so important, because we can, like I did, read all the books and have all the knowledge, but knowledge is not just a head experience. This is the thing that the Taoists really understood when they started to teach sort of all these tantric principles, is the body is the storehouse of knowledge. Brain is just one part of that. And if we isolate one from the other, we're not bringing in the fullness of who we are as a human. Just like the Eve and the Lilith, we need both sides. Yeah. Experienced both, but really wanting to work on the whore and the sexual power. Yes, the trying to keep someone happy. And what does that look like? Does that look like the whore, or does that look like the virginal Eve? And maybe that changes, how do I keep him happy? Putting on a version of myself where I'm trying to do what he wants. Yeah. And so I really believe, as we reclaim the sacred in our sex, the sacred in our relationship to our sexuality, this all starts to dissolve, and there's not this clear delineation anymore, and conflict in us and shame, all of these things we've been talking about. There's a merging and an opening into, I am all of this, and I can choose the bits that work for me in each moment. I'm definitely hearing lots of you wanting more Lilith. Perfect. And so Lilith has been so shut down in our world. I ran a Dark Goddess immersion earlier this year. It was a full day, and we worked with her for a big portion of the day. And it was confronting for a lot of women, to be honest, because a lot of women have not already done, the women that came had not done this kind of work. But it was also really beautiful to see the power coming through their bodies. And so for me, the more that I really find that in myself, the more I give permission to others, for others to do the same. And that is the intention of having this conversation and opening all of this up. So I guess I'd like to go a little bit deeper into this concept of the holy whore and see what it means to you. So now you've got this premise of, some of the wounding that we might be carrying, or again, maybe you knew it and it's just reinforced it. But what do these words mean to you? I would love you to share and really notice what happens in your body. Sacred slut. How do you feel about that? Holy whore. Either of those. Which one calls to you more, and which one evokes a bigger response in your body, and what is that response? Is it openness? Is it curiosity? Is it still some fear and it's not safe? Is it something else? As I'm going to talk about what I believe these terms really mean. And I want you to check in first. Anticipation, excitement. Curious. Oh, interesting. So they have a different energy. Sacred Slut feels different to Holy Whore. Yeah. And yeah, I get that. Life's quest. Yes. Fabulous. Giddiness. Wonderful. So I'm hearing a lot of excitement and curiosity and openness and all of these things. Wonderful. We're in the right place. Thank you for sharing and letting me know. So these words mean a lot of things to different people. How much am I going to go into this? I think I'm going to give you the definitions. So I believe that the words don't mean what we thought that they did. So in Hebrew, hor actually means a cave or a dark hole. Sounds a bit like a womb to me. In Latin, the word for whore is puta, which also means like a well or a hole in the earth. So you're seeing a theme here. And then a variation on that word is putchili, which is the womb of rebirth. Like, that makes my whole body tingle. The womb of rebirth. A place where life and death meet. And in Sanskrit, which is a Vedic, comes from the Vedic lineage, Putta means pure and holy. The holy void. The holy womb. Some would say that the word whore is actually referring to the great womb of the great goddess, the place where everything is birthed from. The moistness, the darkness, the damp of the womb. It's like the bowl of creation. This is where life comes from inside of us as women, a creational energy. And these were metaphors for the mysticalness of a woman's sexual power and creative power. Not so long ago, women were worshipped as goddesses because they could create life, because they could bleed and not die. And the womb is the representation of that, the physical representation of that, that makes that possible. And the invitation is to consider how we can reclaim this word with this ancient understanding of what it was actually intended to mean. It was not ever intended to be derogatory. It was meant to be in worship. And the word has been lost over time. A long time ago, women were really sexually independent They were respected and revered as vessels of the goddess. Before we got into this story about Eve and Lilith and good and bad, every woman was a representation of the divine. There's this definition of the holy whore, which I really love, written by a psychologist who went deep into this topic. And she says, she describes the holy whore as a woman who, through ritual or psychological development, has come to know the spiritual side of her sexuality, her true eroticism, and lives this out according to her circumstances. I'm going to put that in the chat for you, in case you'd prefer to read it. Oh, no, I can't. That was a good idea. She's come to know the spiritual side of her sexuality, sacred sex, which is, for me, what Tantra represents, her eroticism, and lives this out according to her circumstance. She's free, she's liberated, she gets to choose. By this kind of a definition, a sacred slut, a sacred prostitute, or a holy whore uses sex as a means for enlightenment. Because it's not dirty, it's sacred. It's the way we create life. And these vessels, our vessels as women, is how life begins. Sure, we need the sperm, but the egg is the beginning of life. And she resides in the womb. Every woman has this frequency within her to bring life, whether we do or not, whether we create energetically or whether we physically birth a human. I'm creating all the time. I have one child, one teenager, but I'm creating things on a regular basis. So the creational energy of a woman is very different to the creational energy of a man. It's because we have a womb. And so coming back to these definitions, these words, particularly the word whore, is a metaphor for the bottomless black void of the great goddess in the mythology. Feel these words in your body. She who is unnameable, the dark primordial from which all life and light is born. She is the everything and the nothing, the whole and the holy. The ultimate sacred whore is the great goddess. Because what if being a whore meant being connected to the void of the womb, the source of life, the sacred place of primordial creation that is within all of us, the fertile wetlands from which we all emerged, from which life begins. Isn't that just beautiful? Stunning indeed. And so if we can change our definition around this word to understand what it actually really means, the sacred void of the womb, we can start to change our relationship to our body, to our pleasure, and to many other things that ripple out from that. Because we're not carrying around the shame just because we were born with a womb. In fact, it becomes the opposite. The womb holders are the life keepers. the life givers, the light bringers. So for me, being a holy whore is about reclaiming reconnection to our womb and to our throat and to our voice and to our pleasure and to our erotic nature and having all of it. It is being sexually liberated and having a healthy boundaries and having a healthy voice and being in tune with our cycles and our bleeds and our hormones and not having shame about any of it. Think about how liberating that would be. Feels pretty good. Instead of coming from that place of banishment, fear of being cast out, it's like, this is all of me. And we need to love and accept all of this before we can expect anyone else to. So as I come back to these definitions again, how are you feeling in your body now? I'd love you just to check in. Take a few breaths. And just see these words for what they are. Mm-hmm. Indeed. Pure, holy, the womb of creation. And so maybe you've heard about Magdalena, Mary Magdalene, who was the partner, companion, whatever word you want to use, to Jesus, Yeshua. I've been reading some of the Magdalena writings, and they talk about her being a priestess of sacred sex rites. A womb priestess was actually the term that was given to women like her, and also Jesus's mother, Mary. They were both priestesses of the same lineage, womb priestesses, whore. They were performing tantric, sacred acts of energetic and physical sex. And they were seen as so important for society. There's many, many histories around the temples, you know, temples of Isis, temples of Hathor, Aphrodite. You can go deep into these topics, which we won't do today. But I want to plant all these seeds so that you can explore more if you wish in your own. For me, though, when I came across all of this, it was just like, having been working with tantric teachings for more than 15 years, it was like, oh, they're ancient tantrikas, these womb priestesses, these whores. That's what they were doing. And a woman who is connected to her power in this way, who will not be told what she can and can't do, and she knows the power of her body, no one can stop her. This is why women started to be manipulated, because they had so much power that, in a sense, couldn't be contained, that it was terrifying to those who didn't have wombs. So Magdalena was not a prostitute. She was a sacred womb keeper, a sacred whore of the tantric rites. And the readings around this are absolutely mind-blowing if you haven't come across it. And she talks about practices she did with Yeshua that helped recharge his energy so he could actually be resurrected, if you believe in that. And for me, it feels incredibly true when I read it, that the things that we can do when we work with our sexual energy is the biggest secret that they kept and basically took to the grave. because it was so big, it was terrifying. Even back then, courtesans were treated with more dignity than wives. They had more money. They had equal social status to men in places like Greece, because the sacredness of the sexual act was appreciated. It wasn't dirty. And it's time that we reclaim that, whether it's in our own bodies, whether it's in our own relationship, whether we express it with more than one person, that is our choice. But we need to reclaim it in ourselves first. And so there's one more term that I want to share with you. Just to wrap this up with a nice bow. Virgin. Coming back to this, this virgin and whore analogy, the Eve and Lilith, in a sense, where some of these terms first came from. It wasn't anything to do with her hymen and whether she'd had sex of any kind of penetration before, which is what we've been told. She was simply an unmarried woman in ownership of herself, whole unto herself. And isn't that what we all want to be? Even if we're in deep union with someone, that we can be whole in ourselves. So my desire is for us as women to reconcile all of these words, energies, archetypes, and make peace with them so that we can start to vibrate without the shame and step into the fully embodied liberation through our wombs, through reclaiming our cycles, our blood, even if you don't bleed anymore, the mystical capacities of women, intuition, knowing, our connection to nature and the moon, our erotic nature, our sexual expression, speaking our desires. All of these things are, for me, what being a liberated woman looks like. And as we can reclaim these energies and transmute them into something different, we can go to a whole other level within ourselves because we're aligned. A lot of the tantric practice is creating openness through the whole body, through the central channel, from the base, the sexual center, all the way up to the heart. When this whole channel is open and aligned, we are like gods or goddesses because we are accessing the full power that was given to us. And when we're coming from shame and fear, we're contracted. And so what I want to do is invite you to imagine what it would be like if your whole body was online in that way. What would that feel like for you? What would it look like for you? Just even take a moment and imagine that. And maybe you can't imagine that. Maybe you're really close, and that's all okay. Just take a moment and digest all of this. So I've given you a lot of things to contemplate and hopefully start to have a different perspective on. Again, whether it's new or whether you've heard it before. But I want you to feel the power of this kind of a shift. The power of feeling like you can be all of yourself out in the world. Whether you choose to do that is different, or to knowing that you can. Doesn't mean we have to walk around naked all the time or blatantly extreme, but it means we have the choice, which means we can take it to our partner or wherever we're wanting to take it. And we know how to take off the masks and step into our liberated version. And the more we do that, the more it tends to bleed through into other areas of our lives in positive ways. And so that is why I developed this program. I'm going to tell you a little bit about this program, which expands off the concepts that I've been talking about. And then we're going to do an embodiment practice so you can get a sense of, you know, how this actually starts to translate in an experiential way. So from this place of what we've been talking about, the potency of really moving past this shame, this is a journey I took myself on. I described snippets of it earlier at the start of the call, and I really felt like it was time to help more women to have this experience in themselves, to understand the sacredness of what we've just been talking about, reclaiming our wombs, but also our pleasure and also our voice, freedom and liberation, so that we can not feel restricted anymore. And this is how this program, Holy Hall, came to be birthed. And so I've been running programs like this on different types of themes for the last 18 months in group containers. And this is brand new, so it's very, very exciting for me. And what that means is it's still shaping. I have a very clear plan on what I want to teach, but what will happen is going to depend on the group of women who come on the journey with me. So I want to acknowledge that up front. So the way that I work in embodied practice, we will do a practice shortly, but the intention of this program is to really help you to work on the shadows of some of the things we were talking about, you know, the fear around the virgin and the whore, the shame that might be still there, because we hold these things in our bodies. They're not just in the mind, as we talked about earlier. Teaching you how to repattern your voice and your sexual expression through embodied practice every single week. For me, stuff started to change for me when I did embodied practice every day. And the reason I believe is because change happens through the body, not through the mind, through the body. And this is why, for me, embodiment is the missing link to this kind of reclamation for so many of us, because we can't think ourselves there. We can't therapize ourselves there. So the intention of this program is full body liberation, whatever that looks like for you, over 3 months. So what I do is I run my classes in a group format, a little bit like this, although it's more intimate. We're having more interaction when we're in live calls together, and it's a 3-month journey. So the calls will be every single week. It's actually 13 calls over 15 weeks. There's a short 2-week break over Christmas, but it basically calls every single week on a Thursday morning. And there'll be 3 chunks of modules that we'll be working through. The first one is welcoming the dark, which is what I call shadow work. We'll be going into the shadows of all the places that we hold ourselves back within these archetypes, the virgin, the whore, the dark goddess, and all the other ones. Then we will move into finding our voice and reclaiming our power. And then we'll go into more pleasure-based practices to really open up that erotic energy in the body and take it to a whole other level. We have to start in the cleaning up first. It's like, you know, going into the underworld or doing the shadow work is like cleaning up the weeds in the garden before you can then lay the fresh soil, before you can then plant the seeds and then have things grow. And so that's the process that at a high level that I want to take you through, using embodied practice every single week. So when I'm teaching you, there'll be theory a bit like this, but less, and lots of practices, lots of self-reflection, lots of home play. I'm very interactive with how I teach. It's not sit here and listen to me for 2 hours, because that's not going to create any change for you. So the program starts on the 10th of October, which is just over 30 days from now. And again, it's Thursday mornings. You know, I've had women join programs with me who can't do all the live calls. That's completely okay. If you can do some, that would be useful. If you can do none, that's happened too. I've had women do a whole 3-month course with me completely watching the replays. I've done that myself with other people's courses. So don't feel limited by that. It is great to be here in lifetime, but if you can't, then there are ways around that, which I can talk about. Just reach out to me and we can have a chat. There's also a live Telegram group. So the whole 3 months we journey through Telegram together. And what that means is we share what happened for me in this practice, what I'm working through, and that creates the real cohesiveness of the group of women who are going through the program together. And that is almost more important than just what's happening on the calls, because that's the thing that's happening in between and where the real change starts to unfold and where we support each other. In my last program earlier this year, the vulnerability and the depth that the women in the group went through in Telegram was just, it absolutely blew my mind. It was really heartbreaking to end that program because we all felt so beautifully connected. And I'm sure this will be the same because this is an even deeper offering. So I'll give you the link for all the information for the program. Here's the dates, which I've already had up on the screen for you. Pricing is something some people don't like to talk about, but I like to let you know so that you can digest it, because I hate clicking on a page and it doesn't tell me how much something is. So the 3-month program is 1,222 for the whole 3 months. It's basically, normally I would give you 12 months access to all of the calls and all of the content, but because this is a brand new program, what I like to do for people who want to join me the very first time is I like to give you lifetime access. So that means if I run this again next year and I add new content in, which I always do when I run a program again, you get all of that. You get access to all of that in the virtual system. Everything that's new, you still get access to. So as people who want to come in the first time, it's really an exciting opportunity because you can help me shape the program and you get lots and lots of years of access to the content, which I think is very exciting. And it feels really generous for me. I know how much I pay for these kind of things, just sometimes for 6 months access to content. So to have long-term access is, yeah, it's very sumptuous. I also have an early bird discount. So for women who really know that they want to join me in this, I have 5 places at the early bird rate of $9.99. So there's only 5 of those. First 5 women to book in will get that. There's a discount code that you can use. Or there's also a payment plan. So for women who'd rather pay it off monthly, it's $444 per month. And you can basically take that option if that's more accessible to you. I also have a deluxe option, so you can check all this out on the website as well. But I have this program called Radiant Woman, which essentially is my more exclusive program. And it's an open rolling program. So what that means is you can join anytime. You can join 3 months from now, 6 months from now. There's no beginning or ending. But it's a 9-month emotional commitment. So in the gestation of the womb, you come in and you come out a different person. And when you join Radiant Woman, you get all of my programs. So the reason I'm mentioning that is if you decided to join the Radiant Woman offering, which is basically includes Holy Whore, it also includes all my other programs I've been running for the last 18 months, you get all of them. So you can work through all of them. If you have the time and the energy and you just want to go crazy and dive deep into my work, everything is there. That's $100 more a month if you just pay it off on a monthly basis. So that's like the full everything option. And I also have 1 extra call every single month for all the Radiant women. So we'll get together on a Tuesday night once a month for calls as an extra add-on as well. So you can digest all that in writing. I'll send you the links via email and I might actually pop them in the chat here for you as well. There's a couple of questions that I've got here that you may have, and then we're going to go into our embodiment practice. I've already addressed most of these, I think. You don't have to attend all the live calls. It is helpful, but it's not mandatory. It's totally your choice. Some women love them. Some women like to do the replays. There's courses I've bought from most of my teachers overseas, and I knew I couldn't make the live calls because they were in the middle of the night. And I would just watch the replay 2-3 days later. I would make time in my schedule and I would do the replay every single week, just a week later. And so if that suits you better than a Thursday morning, that option is totally there because we'll have the live dynamic of the Telegram group happening. As I said, you'll get lifetime access instead of 12 months access. And I do have an extended payment plan. If you need a little bit more time to pay it off at a lower cost, just reach out to me and I can talk to you about those kind of things. Does anyone have any questions before I take you into an embodiment practice? No questions. Just going to bring the link up and pop it in here for you. So I'm popping this in the chat for those of you who are here. So you can actually just go straight to my website, which is bretaylormolyneux.com.au, and then I'll actually screen share it for you so you can find it. It will be in the email, but if it's easier, I can briefly mention it. So if you go to my website, here it is here, and then in the top menu, you'll find it under group programs right here, Holy Horse. So you can go and have a look, and I'll send the replay out later tonight once it's all been uploaded with all of the links for all these things and the discount codes and all of the things that you need. So let's get and do an embodiment practice, because everything that I teach stems from that. And as I said, I wanted to give you the stuff to chew on before we did that, so that you can go out and really feel the difference in your body from what we've done today and what we've talked about and what we've stirred up, and hopefully planted a lot of seeds for how you want life to be different, or how you can step into that next level, depending on where you're coming from. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take you through a couple of songs. And the way embodied practice works is I'm going to invite you to feel what's happening in your body and move as an expression of that. So the trick is, just because you hear music, it doesn't mean I want you to dance. This is sometimes the thing where we get stuck with music, is we can hear the music and we think, oh, I'm just going to dance. I want you to actually feel what I'm prompting you to feel, and feel it through your body. This is where we store the pain, the trauma, the fear, all the stuff we've been talking about. It's actually stored in the deeper cells and the energetics of the body. So it's not about just dancing to the nice beats. It's literally feel the emotion and move it through your body. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a short track, feeling some of the shame and the fear that we talked about right at the beginning, and then we're going to move. That will evolve. It's like, you know, someone coming from constriction into openness. In the second track, I'm going to invite you to start to move more openly, and then move into embodying a state of more liberation and expansion for yourself. So that's where we're going. I will talk you through each song as we go. And the main thing I want you to do is, if you can, if you're not in a car or something, is to do this standing up and just move around and let your body move the way that it wants to move, in with the intention of the emotions that I'm talking about. So I'm just going to get the music coming back on again. Give me 2 seconds. There it is. Yes, okay. So what I want you to do is I want you to take a moment, because I've been doing a lot of talking, and just feel your body for a second. Take a breath, exhale out of the mouth. And just to feel into the part of you that we first talked about around those terms: slut, prostitute, whore, the old definitions. I just want to invite you to move as an expression of any contraction or tension that you have in your body around these words. And so here's some music. And I just want you to start moving as an expression of that kind of restriction, fear, discomfort. You might shake, you might crawl, you might sit and just let your body feel it and move it. Feel the parts of you that feel conflicted about being all of yourself, sexually or emotionally or verbally in the world, and let it move through your body. And then noticing any places that still feel tight or contracted. And starting to move into expressing opening. It's like you're coming out of a cage. Imagine that you're starting to emerge from a box or a cage and have a little more space, a little more openness, a little more breath. And how does your body move? You know, like, oh, finally, letting those shackles off. If you can start to let go and just let the body start to unfurl slowly or however fast feels good, just letting it shake off, open, stretch, jiggle, growl, whatever feels good. More freedom. Giving yourself permission to really let your body move without thinking. You might even let the breath come out of the mouth, a little bit of sound, a little bit of exhalation. And we have one more song to really take it up, one more level. So I want you to, if you can, let yourself go a little bit wild, a little bit crazy. Shake your ass, stomp your feet, whatever is appropriate for the environment that you're in. Really get into your pelvis, your womb, your primal energy. Open it up and move as that. Fully liberated like Lilith. See if you can try some of that on just for the next minute. And if this is uncomfortable, that's okay. Just try it on. See if you can let yourself really just out of that cage at a whole other level. What does liberation feel like in your body? Sexual liberation, vocal liberation, liberation in all the places that you want it. How do you breathe? How do you move? How do you give space in your body for that energy to flow? And then just coming into stillness, wherever you are, standing or sitting, putting your hands on your body, taking a breath in the nose, out the mouth, and just noticing how you're feeling. Noticing the openness in your body, the places that are more relaxed, where there's more space. If there's tension or discomfort, just notice that too. It's all okay. Really just being aware of how your body is now. That was just a short taste of embodied practice, but I imagine you noticed some shifts in that short amount of time. Taking a breath or two, feeling your body. When you're ready, I'd love you just to share a couple of words of how you're feeling in your body now, the sensations. Anything you notice. Priya. Me too. I definitely feel more alive and more erotic as well. Happy. Nice. Relaxed, expansive. Aroused. Relaxed. Excellent. More calm. Fabulous. It's amazing how many sensations we can have in a short amount of time, isn't it? And so if you've never done really embodied practice before, again, I know there's people of all different levels here, although mostly women who've worked, with me at some capacity before, but not all of them. The way embodied practice works is that we go into those emotions in the body and we create space to feel them in the body. And that is what starts to literally liberate them in the body, because we retrain the body through habit. And so the way that we breathe and move habitually is what creates our closures, whether it's, oh, I can't do that, or oh, I can't speak that, or oh, I can't feel that. We literally train our bodies to keep showing up that way every time we get stuck in that same pattern. And we all have patterns. We all have things that close us down. I still have them. It's just I notice them better than I ever used to, and I can get onto them much faster than before I had these tools. What's so great about embodied practice as well is I'll give you tools and tips. I'll take you through rituals. I'll give you lots of stuff to do, and you go and you do it yourself, and we do it in the group as well. But you have tools that this teaches you that are lifelong tools. So for me, once my teacher gave me some of these tools, I realized I could apply embodied practice to just about anything that I wanted to change. And so it becomes very, very expansive. So we get to have the choice about how much time and energy we invest into changing the things that we want in our lives and the things that we want to, again, create space around. So whatever we're holding in the body that's not working for us, how are we going to address that? Whether you go to therapy, whether you go to the gym, whether you meditate, they're all great things. Embodiment is a very different approach to that, because we're creating a shift at actually all those levels all at the same time. So it might not necessarily look that fancy, but it's where the deeper change starts to happen. So that is a big part of everything that I'm going to be teaching you in the program, in terms of how to move it through the body, through rituals, through shamanic processes, through somatic processes, through mind repatterning processes, all of these things and more. If you have any questions, I'm happy to stick around for a few minutes, and I will send the replay and everything out for everybody who's watching the replay. Please feel free to send me an email if you have questions. Anything you need, just shout. I'd love to welcome some of you into the program. And if you have other things, if you want to know what other programs I have that are in a different vein to this, I have self-paced programs that are much lower cost that you can just do in your own time. So I'll pop the link to that in the email as well. But please shout if you need anything, if you have questions. So lovely to have you all here. Thank you so much, ladies, for being here. Thank you for everybody on the replay, and I look forward to talking to you all more soon. Enjoy the rest of your day.